The Silver State Diner had stood on Carson Street for over 5 decades. Its Art Deco facade and chrome trim a testament to a bygone era. Owner Robert Clayton Miller, a third-generation restaurateur with steel gray hair and cold blue eyes, had inherited the establishment from his father 20 years ago. The diner's reputation for serving the finest comfort food in northern Nevada had made it a local institution, though beneath its polished exterior lay currents of prejudice that had somehow survived into the modern era. Like stubborn weeds in the desert soil, Marcus had driven past the diner countless times during his 15 years in Carson City, watching as other veterans gathered there for morning coffee and afternoon conversations. Something about the subtle shifts in service, the occasional turned-away patron, and the whispered warnings from other black residents had kept him from entering. But today was different. His son, Nevada State Senator Christopher Jameson, was flying in from Carson City next week, and Marcus wanted to scout potential locations for their reunion dinner. The irony of what was about to unfold would soon send shockwaves through Nevada's political establishment and beyond. The bell chimed softly as Marcus pushed open the heavy glass door, its cheerful tone a stark contrast to the sudden silence that fell over the busy lunch crowd. The conversations stuttered to a halt as heads turned, eyes following his measured progress toward the counter. Marcus felt the weight of their stares but maintained his military bearing, dignity intact as he'd done through countless combat missions and civil rights struggles throughout his distinguished career. Behind the counter, Robert Miller emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a pristine white apron. His expression shifted subtly as he registered Marcus's presence, a tightening around the eyes, a slight downturn of the mouth that spoke volumes about generations of inherited prejudice. The air grew thick with tension as Miller approached, his movements deliberate and cold. The other patrons watched the scene unfold with a mixture of discomfort and morbid fascination, their own meals forgotten in the mounting tension. Sarah Martinez, a young waitress with kind eyes and a sociology degree from the University of Nevada, stood frozen by the coffee machine, her heart pounding as she recognized the familiar signs of what was about to happen. In her 3 years working at the diner, she had witnessed similar scenes play out, each one eating away at her conscience until she had started documenting the instances of discrimination in a journal hidden beneath her mattress at home. The incident that unfolded in the next few minutes would be recounted countless times in news reports, social media posts, and eventually, state legislative hearings. Miller's dismissal of Marcus came wrapped in paper-thin excuses about reserved seating and private events. Despite the half-empty tables and prominent open sign glowing in the window, the humiliation was delivered with a veneer of politeness that somehow made it even more cutting. Each word carefully chosen to maintain plausible deniability while leaving no doubt about the true motivation behind the refusal of service. The diner's regular customers shifted uncomfortably in their seats, some staring intently at their plates while others watched with poorly concealed interest. Among them sat retired Judge William Henderson, whose decades on the Nevada bench had given him a front-row seat to the subtle evolution of discrimination in the Silver State. The scene playing out before him stirred memories of cases he'd presided over, where justice had been constrained by the limitations of laws that couldn't quite capture the insidious nature of modern prejudice. Unknown to Miller, the security cameras recently installed as part of a citywide business improvement initiative captured every moment of the interaction. The footage, showing Marcus's dignified bearing in the face of humiliation, would later become powerful evidence in the proceedings that followed. The cameras caught every subtle gesture, every dismissive look, and most importantly, the systematic difference in treatment that would prove crucial in establishing a pattern of discrimination. Sarah Martinez's hands trembled as she pretended to busy herself with the coffee maker, her smartphone pressing against her hip in her apron pocket. For months, she had been collecting evidence of similar incidents, carefully documenting times, dates, and descriptions of discriminatory practices she'd witnessed. Each entry in her hidden journal represented a moral compromise she'd made to keep her job, the weight of which had grown increasingly unbearable. The stillness that had descended over the diner was broken only by the soft hum of the air conditioning and the distant clatter of dishes from the kitchen. Through the large windows, the bustle of Carson City continued unaware, though within minutes, social media posts from witnesses would begin spreading the story across Nevada's capital like wildfire. The stark contrast between the modern, progressive image the city tried to project and the reality of what had just occurred would soon force a community-wide reckoning. Marcus's departure from the diner carried the same quiet dignity that had marked his 32 years of military service. His measured steps across the checkered floor echoed through the silent establishment, each footfall a reminder of the countless miles he had marched in defense of freedoms that were still being denied on American soil. The bell's cheerful chime as he exited seemed to mock the gravity of what had just transpired, its bright tone jarring against the heavy atmosphere left in his wake. The incident might have remained just another untold story of discrimination in Nevada's capital, if not for the presence of Lisa Chin, a freelance journalist who had stopped at the diner while researching an article on Carson City's historic district. From her corner booth, she had captured subtle video footage on her phone, her years of investigative instincts telling her that she was witnessing something significant. The resulting article she would write for the Reno Gazette-Journal would eventually land on the desk of Governor Eleanor Thompson, sparking a chain of events that would reshape Nevada's approach to civil rights enforcement. State Senator Christopher Jameson was reviewing legislation in his Carson City office when the first text messages about the incident began arriving on his phone. The initial shock of learning about his father's humiliation quickly transformed into a cold, focused anger that would fuel the next several months of his political career. As one of Nevada's rising political stars and chairman of the State Senate's Civil Rights Committee, Christopher had built his reputation on measured responses and coalition building. But this incident struck at the heart of everything he had fought against throughout his career. Meanwhile, Robert Miller returned to his office behind the kitchen, unaware that his actions had just set in motion events that would transform not only his life but the entire community. His desk drawer contained yellowed newspaper clippings of his father's contributions to Carson City, including the diner's opening in 1973. The Miller family's story had always been presented as one of hard work and American success, carefully omitting the systematic discrimination that had helped maintain their position in the community. Sarah Martinez spent her lunch break in her car, hands shaking as she typed out a detailed email to the Nevada Equal Rights Commission. The weight of 3 years' worth of witness discrimination pressed down on her conscience as she attached photographs of her documented incidents, including dates, times, and descriptions of countless subtle acts of prejudice she had observed. Her finger hovered over the send button as she considered the implications for her job security, her rental payments, and her future in the community. Within hours of the incident, the story began spreading through Nevada's capital city with the speed of a desert wildfire. Local Facebook groups and community forums buzzed with eyewitness accounts, each version adding new layers to the narrative. The video captured by Lisa Chen had already reached the newsroom of Colo TV in Reno, where veteran news director Michael Reeves recognized the explosive potential of a story that combined military service, racial discrimination, and political connections in Nevada's complex social landscape. The Silver State Diner's Yelp and Google review sections became battlegrounds of public opinion, with longtime customers suddenly facing their own complicity in years of overlooked discrimination. Several prestigious Carson City families, who had proudly displayed their decades-long patronage of the establishment, found themselves uncomfortably reassessing their relationships with the Miller family and their business. The diner's rating plummeted as new reviews poured in, many from people who had witnessed similar incidents over the years but had remained silent. At the Nevada State Legislature building, Senator Christopher Jameson maintained his composure as he methodically began gathering information. His chief of staff, Angela Rodriguez, had already assembled a thick file of similar complaints against the Silver State Diner spanning the past decade. The pattern that emerged showed a systematic practice of discrimination hidden behind a veneer of plausible deniability and selective service. What made this case different was not just the high-profile nature of the victim, but the extraordinary amount of documentation available. Robert Miller remained defiantly confident throughout the day, assuring his worried wife Patricia that this would blow over like all previous complaints had. However, his son Thomas, a recent graduate of the University of Nevada's Business School, watched the unfolding social media storm with growing alarm. The younger Miller had long disagreed with his father's outdated views, but family loyalty and financial dependence had kept him silent. Now, watching their family legacy crumble in real time on his smartphone screen, he began composing a letter that would later become crucial evidence in the investigation. Sarah Martinez's email to the Nevada Equal Rights Commission set off immediate alarms within the organization. Commissioner Diana Wong had been looking for a solid case to demonstrate the need for stronger anti-discrimination legislation in the state. The detailed documentation provided by Martinez, combined with the high-profile nature of the incident involving Marcus Jameson, created a perfect storm of circumstances that could no longer be ignored by state authorities. The media response escalated rapidly as national networks picked up the story, transforming Carson City's local scandal into a nationwide conversation about persistent discrimination in modern America. CNN's Nevada correspondent, Rachel Torres, arrived outside the Silver State Diner the following morning, her live broadcasts framing the Art Deco facade against the backdrop of the Sierra Nevada mountains while discussing Nevada's complex history with civil rights and discrimination. Marcus Jameson's military record became a central focus of the coverage. His service history painted a picture of extraordinary dedication: 3 tours in Afghanistan, multiple combat decorations, and a distinguished career training young Marines. The contrast between his sacrifice for the country and his treatment at the diner resonated deeply with viewers across America. Veterans organizations across Nevada began mobilizing, with the Carson City VFW Post 3726 immediately canceling their monthly breakfast meetings at the Silver State Diner. Commissioner Diana Wong of the Nevada Equal Rights Commission convened an emergency meeting to review Sarah Martinez's evidence. The young waitress's meticulous documentation revealed a disturbing pattern: systematic delays in service for minority customers, fabricated excuses about reserved tables, and subtle pricing discrepancies that had gone unchallenged for years. Martinez's journal entries, time-stamped photographs, and detailed accounts provided the kind of evidence that civil rights investigators rarely encountered. State Senator Christopher Jameson's response surprised many political observers. Rather than immediately leveraging his considerable political influence for punitive measures, he began constructing a comprehensive legislative package addressing systemic discrimination in public accommodations across Nevada. His staff worked through the night, consulting with civil rights attorneys, business leaders, and community organizations to craft legislation that would create lasting change rather than merely punish individual offenders. Robert Miller's initial defiance began to crack as the financial impact became apparent. Regular customers stopped coming. Delivery drivers began refusing to service the diner, and even his longtime produce supplier, Valley Fresh Farms, suspended their account citing their own anti-discrimination policies. The daily protests outside the diner grew larger, with retired Judge William Henderson now among the demonstrators, holding a sign that read, "Justice delayed is justice denied." Patricia Miller watched her husband's growing desperation with a mixture of concern and long-suppressed shame. Their marriage of 35 years had been built on a foundation of unspoken compromises, including her silence about his discriminatory practices. Now, as their family's legacy crumbled, she found herself remembering her own father's warnings about marrying into the Miller family, his subtle hints about their reputation in Carson City's business community. The hidden storage box in their attic contained letters from her father, dating back to 1975, expressing concern about the diner's discriminatory practices. Thomas Miller, increasingly troubled by the mounting evidence against his father, made the difficult decision to come forward. His detailed statement to the Nevada Equal Rights Commission described years of witness discrimination, including specific instructions he had received about treating certain customers differently during his summer jobs at the diner throughout high school and college. His testimony, coming from within the Miller family itself, proved devastating to Robert's attempts to deny systematic discrimination. The University of Nevada, Reno's Department of Sociology began conducting a comprehensive study of discrimination in Carson City's service industry. Using the Silver State Diner case as a focal point, Dr. Amanda Chen's research team uncovered decades of similar incidents across the city, revealing how subtle forms of discrimination had evolved to evade detection while maintaining their discriminatory impact. Their preliminary findings suggested that the diner was merely the visible tip of a much larger iceberg. Local business leaders, fearful of similar exposure, began implementing voluntary anti-discrimination training programs. The Carson City Chamber of Commerce, led by President Marcus Rodriguez, established a task force to develop best practices for ensuring equal service in local establishments. The initiative, initially met with resistance from some older business owners, gained momentum as younger entrepreneurs embraced the opportunity for positive change. Sarah Martinez's role evolved from witness to activist as more service industry workers came forward with their own stories. Her apartment became an unofficial gathering place for waitstaff, bartenders, and hotel workers sharing experiences of witness discrimination. The informal support group eventually developed into the Nevada Service Workers for Equality, with Martinez as its founding president. In the Nevada State Legislature, Senator Christopher Jameson's proposed civil rights legislation gained unexpected support from conservative lawmakers. The compelling story of his father's military service and subsequent humiliation had touched a nerve across party lines. Republican State Senator William Hawthorne, whose own father had served alongside Marcus Jameson in Afghanistan, became a crucial ally in pushing the bill through committee. The bipartisan collaboration marked a significant shift in Nevada's political landscape regarding civil rights enforcement. The national media coverage intensified as celebrated investigative journalist Michael Barnes arrived in Carson City to produce a special report for 60 Minutes. His team's investigation expanded beyond the Silver State Diner, uncovering similar patterns of discrimination throughout Nevada's hospitality industry. The resulting segment, titled Service Denied: America's Hidden Discrimination, would later win an Emmy Award and force several other states to re-examine their civil rights enforcement mechanisms. Inside the Miller household, the strain began showing in unexpected ways. Patricia Miller's discovery of her husband's detailed records of discriminatory practices, hidden in his home office, became the breaking point in their marriage. The notebooks, dating back to 1994, contained explicit instructions for staff about how to discourage certain customers while maintaining plausible deniability. Her decision to turn these documents over to the Nevada Equal Rights Commission, through her son Thomas, marked a decisive turning point in the investigation. The Carson City Police Department faced its own reckoning as Chief Gloria Martinez ordered a review of all discrimination complaints received over the past decade. The audit revealed a disturbing pattern of dismissed reports and uninvestigated claims, particularly those involving the city's more established businesses. Officer James Thompson, a 20-year veteran of the force, came forward with documentation of how such complaints had been systematically downplayed or ignored, sparking an internal affairs investigation. At the University of Nevada, Reno, Dr. Amanda Chen's research team expanded their study to include oral histories from longtime Carson City residents. Their interviews revealed a deeper history of discrimination that had adapted and evolved over decades, becoming more subtle but no less impactful. Elderly residents shared stories of overt segregation in the 1960s that had gradually transformed into the more nuanced forms of discrimination witnessed at the Silver State Diner. The financial impact on the Silver State Diner became increasingly severe as boycotts spread beyond Carson City. Major corporate clients, including the regional offices of Sierra Pacific Power Company and the Nevada Department of Transportation, canceled their catering contracts. The diner's insurance company, citing the mounting discrimination claims, notified Miller of a substantial premium increase. The local bank holding the business mortgage began reviewing their relationship, concerned about potential liability and reputational damage. Marcus Jameson's military connections brought another dimension to the controversy. The commander of Naval Air Station Fallon, Captain Elizabeth Chun, issued a base-wide advisory restricting personnel from patronizing establishments with discriminatory practices. The ripple effect spread through Nevada's military community, with similar directives emerging from Hawthorne Army Depot and Nellis Air Force Base near Las Vegas. The economic impact of losing military personnel business affected not just the Silver State Diner but numerous establishments across the state. Thomas Miller's cooperation with investigators revealed more troubling details about the diner's practices. His access to the business's computer systems provided evidence of systematic price adjustments and service modifications based on customer demographics. The point-of-sale system's audit logs showed patterns of selective discounts and deliberate service delays that could not be explained by legitimate business practices. This digital evidence proved crucial in establishing the intentional nature of the discrimination. Sarah Martinez's advocacy work gained momentum as she testified before the Nevada State Assembly's Civil Rights Committee. Her presentation included recordings from former employees describing their training in discriminatory practices, carefully disguised as customer service protocols. The testimony painted a picture of systematic discrimination masked behind seemingly innocent business policies. Her courage in coming forward inspired other service industry workers across Nevada to share their experiences. The legal proceedings against the Silver State Diner took an unexpected turn when former employee Maria Rodriguez came forward with surveillance footage she had secretly recorded on her phone during her employment in 2022. The videos showed explicit staff meetings where discriminatory practices were discussed under the guise of customer management strategies. This evidence contradicted Robert Miller's public statements about isolated incidents and misunderstandings. The protest movement outside the Silver State Diner evolved into something larger than just a response to a single incident. University of Nevada students organized daily demonstrations that grew to include civil rights activists, veterans groups, and community organizations from across the state. The gathering became known as the Carson City Stand for Justice, drawing participants from as far away as Las Vegas and Reno. Local artists contributed by creating powerful murals on permitted spaces near the diner, depicting scenes of military service, civil rights struggles, and community unity. The psychological toll on Robert Miller became increasingly evident as his carefully constructed world crumbled. Security cameras captured him alone in the diner late at night, staring at old photographs of his father and grandfather on the walls. His son Thomas later reported finding him in tears, clutching albums of family history that told a different story than the sanitized version he had always presented. The weight of generations of inherited prejudice and its consequences seemed to physically age him as the weeks progressed. State Senator Christopher Jameson's legislative efforts expanded beyond just addressing public accommodation discrimination. His team began drafting comprehensive civil rights reforms that included enhanced penalties for discrimination, mandatory bias training for business license renewals, and the creation of a rapid response civil rights enforcement unit within the Nevada Attorney General's office. The legislation, dubbed the Nevada Equal Access Act, garnered support from both urban and rural legislators. Patricia Miller's decision to separate from her husband sent shockwaves through Carson City's social circles. Her public statement, published in the Nevada Appeal, detailed decades of witness discrimination and her own complicity through silence. Her courage in coming forward inspired other family members of prominent business owners to speak out about similar practices they had observed. The ripple effect touched several other established Carson City businesses, leading to internal investigations and policy changes. The national media coverage intensified when Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Rebecca Chong arrived to produce a long-form investigative piece for The Atlantic. Her research uncovered historical connections between the current discrimination at the Silver State Diner and Nevada's complex history with civil rights. Archives revealed how the diner's practices were part of a larger pattern of systematic discrimination that had evolved from overt segregation to more subtle forms of exclusion. The Nevada Gaming Commission, traditionally focused on casino operations, found itself drawn into the controversy when similar discriminatory practices were reported at restaurants within Carson City's gaming establishments. Commissioner David Blackwood initiated a comprehensive review of service policies across Nevada's hospitality industry, threatening to withhold gaming license renewals from establishments that failed to implement robust anti-discrimination measures. This unprecedented move sent tremors through Nevada's powerful gaming industry. Marcus Jameson's military accomplishments became more widely known as fellow veterans shared stories of his service. A particularly moving account came from retired Marine Corps Colonel James Henderson, who described how Jameson had saved his entire platoon during a fierce firefight in Afghanistan's Helmand province in 2002. The stark contrast between Jameson's heroism abroad and his treatment at home became a powerful symbol of persistent discrimination in American society. Sarah Martinez's documentation expanded beyond the Silver State Diner as other service workers began sharing their experiences through the newly formed Nevada Service Workers for Equality. Their collected evidence revealed a disturbing network of informal communications between certain business owners, warning each other about undesirable customers and sharing tactics for discriminatory service that could evade legal scrutiny. This evidence suggested a more organized system of discrimination than previously suspected. The architectural firm contracted to renovate several historic Carson City buildings discovered original blueprints of the Silver State Diner from 1973, revealing separate entrance designs that had been modified before construction. This physical evidence of planned segregation, though never implemented, provided historical context for the diner's discriminatory practices. The discovery prompted the Nevada State Historic Preservation Office to begin examining other buildings for similar historical patterns of design discrimination. The Carson City School District incorporated the unfolding events into its curriculum, using the situation as a teaching moment about civil rights, civic responsibility, and social justice. High school history teacher Angela Thompson developed a unit examining how discrimination had evolved from overt segregation to more subtle forms, using the Silver State Diner case as a contemporary example. Students began conducting oral history projects, interviewing longtime residents about their experiences with discrimination in Nevada. Dr. Amanda Chen's research team at the University of Nevada, Reno expanded their study to include economic analysis of discriminatory practices in Carson City businesses. Their findings revealed a disturbing pattern of systematic overcharging and service manipulation that had cost minority customers an estimated $3.2 million over the past decade. The study's publication in the Journal of Social Economics sparked investigations into similar patterns across other Nevada cities. Internal emails obtained through public records requests revealed that several Carson City officials had received complaints about the Silver State Diner's practices as far back as 2015, but had chosen not to investigate. City Manager Robert Thompson resigned amid growing criticism of the administration's failure to address these earlier complaints. His departure triggered a broader examination of how discrimination complaints were handled across all city departments. The Nevada Attorney General's office assembled a special task force to investigate the broader implications of the case, led by Deputy Attorney General Maria Sanchez. The investigation uncovered evidence suggesting that discriminatory practices extended beyond the service industry into housing, employment, and lending throughout the state. The findings would later form the basis for sweeping civil rights reforms in Nevada. Robert Miller's psychological state continued to deteriorate as more evidence emerged. Security footage from the diner's cameras showed him spending hours alone after closing, watching recordings of past incidents with an expression of growing horror. His personal diary, later submitted as evidence by his son Thomas, revealed a man struggling to reconcile his inherited prejudices with the mounting evidence of their harmful impact. Veterans groups across Nevada organized a powerful demonstration of solidarity with Marcus Jameson. Operation Desert Storm veteran Michael Chong coordinated a gathering of over 500 veterans from all branches of service, forming a silent line outside the Silver State Diner. Each veteran wore their service medals and carried photographs of diverse military units throughout American history, creating a powerful visual statement about service and discrimination. Local banking institutions began reviewing their lending practices after evidence emerged of the Silver State Diner receiving preferential treatment despite documented discrimination complaints. Nevada State Bank's internal audit revealed troubling patterns in commercial loan approvals that appeared to favor established businesses with questionable practices over minority-owned enterprises. The findings prompted the Federal Reserve's regional office to launch a broader investigation into banking discrimination across the state. The psychological impact on Sarah Martinez intensified as she became the face of workplace whistleblowers in Nevada. Her apartment received threatening letters from anonymous sources, forcing local law enforcement to provide protection. Despite the intimidation, she continued gathering evidence and supporting other service industry workers coming forward with their stories. Her courage earned her the Nevada Press Association's Civil Rights Advocate of the Year award. Carson City's tourism industry faced unprecedented scrutiny as travel websites began including discrimination warnings in their city reviews. The Convention and Visitors Bureau scrambled to implement new anti-discrimination guidelines for member businesses, requiring signed pledges and mandatory staff training. Several national organizations reconsidered their conference bookings, threatening millions in potential revenue loss for the city. Thomas Miller's cooperation with investigators revealed more than just his father's discriminatory practices. His access to old family records uncovered evidence of systematic discrimination dating back to his grandfather's ownership, including coded notations in guest books and staff manuals from the 1980s. These historical documents provided crucial context for understanding how discriminatory practices had evolved and persisted across generations. The Nevada Equal Rights Commission expanded its investigation to include digital evidence from social media platforms. Their analysis revealed private Facebook groups and messaging chains where local business owners shared strategies for deterring minority customers while avoiding legal consequences. This digital trail demonstrated the sophisticated evolution of modern discrimination techniques. The national impact of the Carson City controversy reached Washington, D.C., where congressional representatives began examining federal civil rights enforcement mechanisms. The House Subcommittee on Civil Rights and Civil Liberties, chaired by Congresswoman Eleanor Martinez, scheduled hearings on modern discrimination in public accommodations. Marcus Jameson's story became a central case study in demonstrating how prejudice had adapted to evade existing legal frameworks. Local religious leaders, initially hesitant to become involved, found themselves drawn into the controversy. Reverend James Williams of the First Baptist Church broke his silence with a powerful sermon about moral courage and community responsibility. His words inspired other faith leaders to address discrimination within their congregations, leading to a unified religious coalition supporting civil rights reform in Nevada. Patricia Miller's personal journey became a story of redemption as she worked with civil rights organizations to develop training programs for business owners. Her intimate knowledge of how discrimination operated within family-owned establishments proved invaluable in identifying subtle practices that often escape notice. Her workshops, titled Breaking the Cycle, attracted attention from business associations across the western United States. The Nevada State Museum recognized the historical significance of the unfolding events by creating a special exhibition titled Evolution of Inequality: Carson City's Civil Rights Journey. The exhibit included artifacts from the Silver State Diner, Sarah Martinez's documented evidence, and oral histories from community members affected by decades of discrimination. The installation drew record crowds and sparked difficult but necessary conversations about the state's history. The economic ripple effects reached beyond Carson City as major corporations reviewed their relationships with local businesses. Tech giant Silicon Systems canceled plans for a data center in northern Nevada, citing concerns about the state's commitment to equal rights. This decision, representing a potential loss of thousands of jobs, forced state officials to accelerate their response to discrimination concerns. The Silver State Diner's once pristine reputation among Carson City's elite crumbled further when forensic accountants discovered irregular financial patterns suggesting systematic price gouging of minority customers. The analysis, conducted by the prestigious firm Henderson and Associates, revealed sophisticated software modifications in the point-of-sale system that automatically applied hidden surcharges based on customer demographics. This discovery triggered investigations into similar practices at other established restaurants across Nevada. Marcus Jameson's military connections continued to amplify the story's impact. A group of retired Navy SEALs, led by Commander Richard Torres, organized a nationwide veteran advocacy campaign called Service Knows No Color. Their social media campaign, featuring stories of diverse military units throughout American history, went viral and attracted support from celebrities and political figures across the political spectrum. The Nevada legislature's investigation expanded when whistleblowers from other Carson City businesses came forward. Former employees of the prestigious Mountain View Country Club revealed similar discriminatory practices, suggesting a broader pattern of systematic discrimination among the city's upper-class establishments. The revelations forced several prominent business leaders to resign from community organizations and boards. Sarah Martinez's advocacy work attracted the attention of civil rights organizations nationwide. The Southern Poverty Law Center provided legal support and resources to help establish a permanent civil rights monitoring network in Nevada. Martinez's detailed documentation methods became a model for service industry workers across the country, leading to the creation of a national database of discrimination incidents. Robert Miller's world continued to unravel as former friends and business associates distanced themselves. The Carson City Chamber of Commerce voted unanimously to revoke his membership, while the Nevada Restaurant Association issued a formal condemnation of his practices. His isolation deepened as even longtime family friends began sharing stories of witnessed discrimination they had previously ignored. The psychological impact on Robert Miller manifested in increasingly erratic behavior. Security cameras captured him wandering the empty diner at night, engaging in one-sided conversations with the photographs of his father and grandfather that hung on the walls. His son Thomas reported finding handwritten letters of confession scattered throughout the office, detailing decades of discriminatory practices and expressing growing remorse. The local mental health community recognized these actions as signs of a man confronting the moral weight of generational prejudice. The University of Nevada's law school established the Civil Rights Documentation Project, dedicating resources to collecting and analyzing evidence of modern discrimination techniques. Professor Michelle Zhang led a team of law students in creating a comprehensive database of subtle discriminatory practices, using the Silver State Diner case as their primary case study. Their research revealed how discriminatory practices had evolved to become nearly invisible to casual observers while maintaining their damaging impact. Carson City's real estate market experienced unexpected turbulence as investigations revealed connections between property values and systematic discrimination. The Nevada Real Estate Commission discovered evidence that certain neighborhoods had been artificially devalued through coordinated business practices, including strategic placement of unwelcoming establishments. This revelation led to a broader investigation into housing discrimination across the state. The Nevada Gaming Control Board's investigation expanded to examine how high-end casino restaurants treated minority high rollers. Their findings suggested a complex system of coded communications between establishments, sharing information about customer backgrounds and coordinating service levels. This discovery threatened the licenses of several prestigious casino operations, forcing rapid policy changes throughout the industry. National civil rights leaders descended on Carson City, transforming the local controversy into a symbol of modern discrimination nationwide. Reverend Marcus Johnson, prominent civil rights activist, organized a series of town hall meetings addressing the subtle evolution of prejudice in American society. These gatherings attracted participants from across the country, turning Carson City into an unexpected focal point for national civil rights discussions.